Hello and welcome to Manufacturing and Engineering Week. This is a culmination of a year's worth of work. Back and forth, so many speakers gathered, so much content pulled together, all here, all for you, all to celebrate manufacturing and engineering and to enable businesses that participate within it to come out of it stronger, to learn, to be inspired and to make a difference. So we kick off with our digital day, so thank you for joining us online. The sessions that we've got today are phenomenal, with a range of speakers bringing a real discipline and a huge amount of experience to our day. So starting off, we'll have Jürgen Meyer, former CEO of Siemens. Then following on from him, we have Brian Holliday, MD of Siemens Digital Business, but also the newly announced co-chair of Made Smarter. Following on from him, we have Catherine Bennett, CBE, the chief exec of the High Value Manufacturing Catapult. And following on from that, our final speaker of the day is Chris Courtney, who is the champion for Made Smarter. So much content, some great speakers. So buckle up, we're about to get started. It's going to be really fun. Please do put your questions in the comment bar. Get involved, do talk to one another and enjoy the sessions. Thank you. So, welcome to Manufacturing and Engineering Week 2022. This is our first visit to Manufacturing and Engineering Week, and we're kicking off with our digital day before we open the doors at the NEC tomorrow and the day after, and then rounding off with another digital day on Friday. So our first speaker, or the first person we get to speak to, is the newly minted event director for Manufacturing and Engineering Week, Natig Azadulev. So Natig, welcome.
Thank you very much, Ed. Thanks a lot. It's nice to be here. Around 4 months with 19, very exciting. Time flew so quickly. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, I suppose to begin with, I've worked actually most of my life in events and exhibition industry. I might be new to 19, but I'm not new to the M&A Week, but I'm not new to the manufacturing and engineering industry. As a big part of my career in events was working and running an event on coil winding and electric manufacturing. So, it feels great to be part of M&A Week, and it feels great to be back to be part of this great industry and community. Apart from that, I have spent a couple of years living in Italy, managing a language school in Ancona, Adriatic Sea. I speak 4 different languages, and my first degree is in foreign languages. So it was something, interesting and fun to experience, something different. But I did miss the buzz and energy of organizing events, bringing passionate people together, helping our industries. That's why I returned to London to keep doing what I love most.
So it's been an exciting few months for you, to say the least, and an exciting year for the wider team involved in Manufacturing and Engineering Week. So what can we look forward to over the course of the next few days?
Yeah, so much. Let me start with the phenomenal speaker lineup we have already. Kwasi Kwarteng, Secretary of State for Business, Lord Hutton, the Chair of Make UK, Stephen Phipson, CEO of Make UK, Rosa Wilkinson, Director of Policy at HVM Catapult. We have great speakers from Vertical Aerospace, Ford, Bank of England, Siemens, IBM, just to name a few. We also have, on top of that, a great lineup of workshops, 5 workshops actually altogether, with lots of incredible insights from true experts of the industry, from companies who are exhibiting and have something to share, to demonstrate. On top of that, we have over 200 market-leading exhibitors and suppliers coming from design engineering, manufacturing, maintenance industries.
Yeah, I mean, it is the breadth of content that's available. I would say that I'm the content director, but the breadth of content that's available is absolutely phenomenal. We have 200 speakers across the keynote theatres on top of everybody you've already outlined. And so it is really, really exciting. So there's lots of key learnings, there's lots of practical workshop-based learnings that you can implement immediately, and lots of things that are designed to help you make your business better by attending the event. But from your perspective, there's lots of different things that we've got organised for the event, I know. So what are your highlights? What are the things you're really looking forward to seeing in action?
Well, where do I start? Let me start with innovation zone, right? That's an area we designed. It's inspiring examples of what British manufacturers achieve from innovation point of view, or can achieve. We just to demonstrate people few examples of it. We're gonna have Aston Martin car, sports car simulator, for example. So anyone who's visiting will be able to try out and try to get the fastest lap. We're going to have on this area also the first biomethane tractor by New Holland, AI Formula student car, and the world's first VTOL biplane. All the products there to kind of show what can be done. We're going to have also a bit of fun at the show. We're going to be inspired by an old TV program. We're going to have the Great Egg Race. It's a competition that's going to run 2 days. Teams of engineers will compete, trying to basically catapult a raw egg across a 1 meter wall into a basket, trying not to break it, of course, in the process. And they will be given a set of instruments that they don't know yet what those instruments and details will be. And they will have prep time, and then they will have to try to get it out. Team that breaks least eggs wins. We'll have their special area as well for people to come and watch, cheer, and just have a little bit of a fun. Now, as you said, we have things that are there to inspire people. There are things there to just make it fun and interesting, but also we have an areas where it's for the critical things. And cyber at the moment, as far as manufacturing industry concerned, it is very, very critical. More and more companies moving to Industry 4.0. Digital manufacturing is a big thing right now, and it's only going to get bigger. So as we move more digital, the chances and importance of cyber protections and cyber attacks are growing. That's why what we're doing is we're going to create as a part of the show, we're going to have an area where we'll simulate a cyber attack manufacturing plant, just to show you what would happen, what would be hacker doing at that point, and what will be the response from the manufacturer side, just to show how quickly things move and how damaging this can be if it's not if you don't think about these things in advance, and and how important thing to kind of if you are moving to the digital, especially to make sure that your cybersecurity is taken care of. To be honest, I can be here all day talking about all the things I'm excited about, but this is just a few to name.
Well, we can't let you talk all day, I'm afraid, because I've got Jürgen Meyer waiting to speak, and I think a lot of people want to hear what he has to say.
I think so too.
I think it's very exciting what you've outlined and what the 19 team have produced in Manufacturing and Engineering Week. It's certainly a fantastic first step on a very exciting and bold vision for a journey to try and create the Hanover Fair of the UK. I know that's the original ambition and something that we are all striving for. So in the meantime, for those people that are watching right now who might be thinking, well, I tell you what, I want to hear from the Secretary of State. I want to hear from someone from Ford, or from IBM, from GKN, from Airbus, from any of the speakers that are there, or the practical workshops, or indeed, as you've outlined there, the opportunity to see a live hack of your cyber system in front of you from the hacker's perspective and also from the manufacturer's perspective. But it's on tomorrow. Have I missed the boat? Well, answer me that. Have we missed the boat?
Not at all. Not at all. Registrations are open. They're free. All you need to do is get to our website and register yourself for a free ticket. Come and join us. Come and join actually your industry. On that, as part of our effort, we were just talking about things that are critical. And another thing is that is critical for industry is, net zero and sustainability, and especially for manufacturing industry. So considering keeping that in mind, we are actually, as part of our effort to offset our footprint as an organizing for running the event, we have calculated how much carbon footprint we're going to generate and we're going to be planting over 5,400 trees to offset that carbon footprint. But we will also be planting a tree for each visitor that comes in on the day. So by visiting our show, not only are you going to have access to this lovely, amazing show, but in a way you're going to help to make the planet greener.
Brilliant. And that should be reason enough. So I know you'll be there over the next few days. I'll be there, of course, with so many speakers, and we'll be filming live from the event as well. So we look forward to seeing as many people as would like to join us. So everyone watching, please feel free to register. As Natig says, it's entirely free to attend, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. But thank you, Natig, for joining us. And we will now move on to our first speaker. We're delighted that Jürgen Meyer, former chair of Made Smarter, former CEO of the Siemens Group of Companies, former advisor to the government on industrial strategy, former director of the Department for Business Innovation and Skills. He's done a lot, it is safe to say, and now chair of the Digital Catapult. So delighted to welcome Jürgen Meyer next. So stay with us. Thank you again, Natig.
Thank you.
Welcome to Manufacturing and Engineering Week 2022. We start with a phenomenal keynote speaker. I'm delighted that he was able to join us. Jürgen Meyer, CBE, former chief exec of the Siemens Companies for the UK, advisor to the government on industrial strategy, chair of Made Smarter, and so many other things. A phenomenal industrial leader, and someone that's going to give us a great insight onto his views on where manufacturing sits, what's happening, what needs to happen, and what the future looks like. So without further ado, delighted to kick off with this opening keynote speaker, Jürgen Meyer.
Well, thank you very much, Ed, for that overly kind introduction. And I really am delighted to be here and speaking to you all at this celebration of the Manufacturing and Engineering Week 2022. Now, we've all been to lots of great manufacturing conferences over the last couple of years, talking about our journey to digital transformation, fourth industrial revolution, net zero. Some of them have been virtual, some of them have been in person, which has been wonderful, and this one in a hybrid fashion, which is great too. And to me, this conference, the mood, the build-up, it feels a little bit different. We're not talking about the fourth industrial revolution that is going to be happening at some point. It is happening right now. We're not talking about that we need to get round to becoming more net zero. We're doing it, and it's happening right now. And the pressure is on. We've had COP26 last year. It's clear that we all absolutely need to be on that net zero journey. And we've certainly been learning how to digitalize. I remember when we started the Made Smarter review back in 2017, my goodness, that seems such a long time ago now. And we were hugely disappointed by the lack of pace we saw in British manufacturing at adopting advanced digital technologies. And our research at that time showed us that only 20% of companies felt that they were anywhere near ready enough to even start the journey. Well, last year, Make UK did a survey that said that 80% of UK manufacturers, you in the room here, said that you are confident that digital manufacturing, fourth industrial revolution, call it whatever we want, it will be an absolute reality in your business over the next few years, and you will be well on the journey by 2025. And I don't think anybody is questioning the need to accelerate the pace on net zero. I visited a company recently, a small company, an SME in Rochdale called Crystal Doors. Now, you wouldn't think that a manufacturer making doors for kitchen units or bathroom units, or could be cupboards in your bedroom, you wouldn't think that that would be where the latest of digital technology and net zero is happening. But it was. I was blown away. And the owner told me that 5 years ago, he set himself and his small team a target to be net zero by not 2035, not 2050, but by this year, 2022. And I spoke to him again just very recently. And guess what? He is going to achieve being net zero by 2022. And that's not by some offsetting. That is by having put in real renewable energy generation, some of it off grid, and of course, optimized his manufacturing processes very significantly. So if a small manufacturing company in Rochdale can do it, why can't we all? Why wait till 2035? Oh my goodness, I hope nobody is waiting till 2050. And of course, we're not doing this because it's part of the global good for the world. Of course, we need to make sure that we support climate change, but we're also doing it because it just makes really, really good business sense. Adopting net zero practices, adopting digital technologies, it makes manufacturers like Crystal Doors more competitive, more resilient. It protects them against the energy price shocks that we are seeing at the moment. And it makes the manufacturing operation so much more flexible, so much more adaptive, which is exactly what we need to be in this new, much faster moving world. So it all just makes sense. And what are the trends in digital technology? Well, you know what they are. And here at the Manufacturing and Engineering Week, there is certainly lots of technology advice and support to tank up on. But let me just talk about a few of those trends. I mean, the first one is very clearly software as a service. I remember when I was in manufacturing and those decisions to buy huge software systems, whether it was the latest ERP or PLM, or maybe you were looking at a CRM system. I mean, the purchasing decisions of those were quite agonizing. But today, with software as a service, license costs, actually, that is made so much easier. And you don't have to worry so much about the security. That is looked after for you. And you're not just getting great software updates like you used to on old software systems with a CD arriving in the post and having to update everything, which was a nightmare. Today, it just happens in the background, almost on a daily or on a weekly basis. A huge trend of industrial 5G. I'm told that with an industrial 5G communications network, you can connect 1 million devices in your factory. Well, I would suggest that's enough for pretty much all of your factories in the room today. And there's digital twinning. I remember when we were talking about digital twinning as some fancy toy that one day might arrive and we can digital twin our manufacturing process or our product. Well, today, it's absolutely real. And it is the absolute way to connect the virtual to the real world. And then there's the advanced machinery of robotics, of additive manufacturing, or it might be the latest flexible CNC manufacturing cell. And then let's not forget that most of the time, it's not about any of those technologies alone. It's about the systems integration, and it's about the data that is required for the connectivity to be able to optimize the performance, not just of every machine cell, but of the entire manufacturing process. And here in the UK, we have built a great ecosystem of innovation and business support, which is there to support manufacturers. And we've done that together. Many of us here in the room today at this conference. I was at Print City at Manchester Metropolitan University recently, And it was so fantastic to see small to medium-sized manufacturers engaging and exploring their possibilities. I listened to a brand new startup getting into the market of car baby safety devices and looking at additive manufacturing as core of the production to some of those products. I was listening to a manufacturer of artificial limbs using additive manufacturing. And there was also plenty of manufacturers sitting in more traditional automotive or aerospace supply chains, exploring what additive manufacturing can do to support their business and their customers. Now, Print City is just one of many of the amazing facilities we have up and down the countries. The way that our catapults have developed, the high-value manufacturing catapults, of course, well represented here, and the digital catapult, which I'm proud to chair, that has built some amazing 5G industrial test beds for manufacturers to come on board and to be able to test their real live applications on such a network. And they're all here at this conference today for you to network with, for you to engage with, and they're there to support you. There is, of course, also Made Smarter, which I was very proud to be a part of for many years. And I'm so delighted that that is now moving across the country, both with its innovation centers, where you can work to try new innovation processes, whether it's about a better digital connected supply chain, or whether it's better optimizing your digital connected factory. And of course, there is a support for adopting digital technologies through the Made Smarter adoption program, initially piloted in the Northwest, but I'm delighted that it is now also available in the West Midlands, in the Yorkshire, and in the Northeast. So we have a pretty good ecosystem. Have we invested as much as Germany, Italy, Japan? No, we haven't. But look, it's a damn sight better than what we had a decade ago. And what I've learned in my many years of British manufacturing is that we are incredibly ingenious, we are incredibly innovative, and we've achieved an awful lot without the support network. And so with the support network we now have available, I think we really are in the best possible place to make the most of this fourth industrial revolution. But it will come down to our leadership. And for that, it's helpful to be at conferences like this, to tank up on energy. I believe there's going to be 180 content sessions. There's going to be over 80 practical hands-on problem-solving sessions in areas of digital technologies, case studies on how to become more net zero. I think it's now down to us as a manufacturing sector to engage, show leadership, learn from one another, and accelerate our journey towards net zero and digitalization. So the fourth green industrial revolution, it's here, it's happening now, it's down to us. Let's make a huge success of it. Thank you.
So, Jürgen, thank you so much for that. It was insightful, as you'd expect, a broad reach of coverage across all the different things that are happening. I just wanted to touch on a few things, questions that are obviously coming in on it. And one thing, the initial case study that you talked about with Crystal Doors, as you say, not something that you would normally associate with cutting edge net zero innovation. Phenomenal success story, and also to try and force that change far, far quicker. SMEs, are they in a much better place generally for being able to pivot quicker than the larger manufacturers? And is this a huge opportunity? And how should SMEs be taking advantage of that? Because as you were saying, it's not just doing the right thing, it has a tangible business change for them.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you would have asked me 10 years ago, I would have said that SME are probably at a disadvantage for the simple reason that they didn't have the financial might to be able to invest in some of the technology that's required to make this transformation. but that has massively changed with software as a service, with robotic cells becoming so much cheaper, with additive manufacturing costs coming down an awful lot, and through the fact that across the UK, we've now created an ecosystem where people can have sandpits and can play, don't need to invest in capital equipment like an expensive additive manufacturing machine until you're sure that you've checked and trialed and that the process really works for you. So I actually think today, I think SMEs, given that they're normally a bit more nimble, a bit more flexible, have got everywhere as much the same chance as a large company, and if not some advantages. And I talked in my speech about crystal doors. You know, there is a great example of it. The one thing that I notice when I go and visit companies like Crystal Door is what ultimately makes the difference is all of what I just talked about. But the real big ingredient is leadership. At Crystal Doors, the owner said, we're going to be energy neutral, net zero by 2022. Everybody probably thought he'd gone absolutely barking mad, but it's that sort of leadership that really creates the transformation.
Thank you. I mean, it is just a phenomenal story, and I don't doubt that it will be inspiring a lot of SMEs and the leaders in SME companies that are watching this and participating over the course of M&E Week. Now, the first thing that you think about then at that point, you talked about the ecosystem that's now been created. Couldn't agree more that you go back to when we were having these conversations, you and I, like 10 years ago. It is night and day different now. Obviously, we would always like there to be more support for manufacturing. So if you're listening, government, more support, please. But the first thing you then think of is, how do I start the process? And it's taking that first step, seems to me, in any business, is the hardest part. So there are so many avenues you can go down. What is those first nascent steps that takes you down the path to success, both environmentally, cost-based, and developing your business? Where do you begin?
Well, I think the best place to begin, quite frankly, is to go to one part of this ecosystem, and whether that is, you know, the Made Smarter adoption program, whether that's the digital, the high value manufacturing catapult. If your challenge is about additive manufacturing in Manchester, you can go to Print City. There are other equivalents around the country. Because the other thing I've learned, especially through Made Smarter, is that sometimes what a manufacturer might think is the right solution turns out not to be. And actually, very often, what the manufacturer has got in their mind is way more expensive than what can ultimately be achieved. And there is so much knowledge out there. And the other thing that I find just wonderful about our manufacturing sector is out of all of the sectors, you know, we're so happy to share and help each other. You know, we're not secretive about what we're learning about digitalization and manufacturing. And so I think it really is, it's get out there, come to conferences like this, and engage with the ecosystem, and you'll be amazed what creative and what good ideas, and sometimes what quite simple ideas turn out to help improve your manufacturing operation.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you heard it from Jürgen, so expect to see you coming through the doors tomorrow to be able to take advantage of all the content that's on offer and meet all of these people that he's talking about. One interesting thing as well is you're talking about energy efficiency from the basis of creating your own systems, actually putting it in-house. So ground source heat pumps, wind, is that achievable? Is that tangible now for businesses?
Absolutely. And look, I mean, if I was a small or a large manufacturer, I would seriously be thinking about what I can do to get myself as off-grid as possible, because you know, look what's happened with the energy prices. Now, look, I'm sure it will settle again at some point, but you know, these are tough times to get through if you're an SME. So if you can get yourself through periods, whether it's with solar, whether it's ground source heat pump, indeed, you know, to take yourself just off grid during peak energy pricing, to put in battery systems for some storage that you can switch in whilst energy pricing into your manufacturing is rising. I mean, these are all absolute possibilities and not just for large companies. So it's totally possible.
Well, I must admit, we have been looking at trying to do, even in our own home, in our garden, trying to put a ground source heat pump in. And the tangible benefits just as a homeowner that they were talking about was phenomenal. So we are looking at that at the moment, but it's a lot of digging. It's the case for residential. So one other question that we've had come through is talking about, actually, we didn't mention skills, and skills remains an ongoing challenge. And leadership, 100% agree with you. A strong, clear, transparent leadership that gives a clear plan to its workers and its engaged team to deliver on net zero and improvements to business. But how are we able to? What's happening, in your opinion, across the board in terms of delivering the people to help us and growing that next generation?
Yeah, no, thank you, Ed. It's so important you raise that. I did talk in my address about the fact that we've created a much better ecosystem of sort of physical assets to help us. But the people side of it, I'm afraid, is still nowhere near as organised and well developed as it needs to be. Now, again, don't get me wrong. I mean, we've moved mountains in the last, decade in terms of the new apprenticeship schemes that are available. I'm seeing institutes of technology now coming to various parts of the country. There's many more degree apprenticeships through universities. So there is a lot going on, but it is at one heck of a confused landscape. Now we are, as sort of a made smarter, high value manufacturing catapult, digital catapult, Ingenuity, a number of these organizations. There is a much more concerted effort, I would say, also to work with the Department for Education to try and see whether we can just coordinate all of this better, because that's what it is. I don't think there's any lack of ambition. I don't think there's actually any lack of doing things. It's just the coordination that is not as good as it needs to be. And there are attempts to do that. I see more appetite for it. And again, the thing I would also say is, please, as the private sector, wherever you are, do engage. Engage through your local enterprise partnership, through your locals skills agencies, and engage and help develop and help frame what this skills system should look like to help support the sort of skills that you need to transform your manufacturing operations.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So our final wrap-up question now, because I'm so grateful for the time that you've given us. And for the insights that you've shared. But that final question, everything you've talked about there, that transformation over the last 10 years, the energy to get behind it, to push it on further, feels like we are now at a positive turning point where advantage is in our sights rather than more and more and more challenges. Would you say that's a fair assessment? And what would be your kind of final, the future looks like this, let's seize it statement?
No, I think you've described it perfectly and genuinely. As I was sort of preparing my thoughts for this conference, that's how I felt. I feel like this is now, look, we've done the best we possibly can to prepare ourselves. Yes, it's not all perfect, like we just talked about with the skill system, but we've sort of got what we've got. We're in the middle of the transformation, and we've just got to pull together. And we've got to make this work. In terms of my look forward, I hope that in another 10 years' time, we all come to this conference and it has a genuine celebratory note to it, where we say, look, it hasn't been easy. I mean, look, this is not easy to create a fourth green industrial revolution, but where we look back and we do pat ourselves on the back and we say, look, as manufacturing leaders, we've done a pretty damn good job at transforming our industries, at optimizing, at digitalizing, at moving to a net zero, and we've created better opportunities for the next generation who will take our industry forward.
Well, what a great way to end this, our first an opening keynote to Manufacturing and Engineering Week 2022. We've got lots more content coming over the next few days. So we'll see you online and at the NEC over the next 2 days. Thank you so much, Jürgen, for starting us off, for participating and for supporting all we're doing. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jürgen. So much to think about. Digital transformation for manufacturing is a huge topic. Made Smarter is at the front of that, but also it's really important to get a perspective from a manufacturer, from someone that is at the coalface. So we're delighted to have as our next speaker Brian Holliday, the Managing Director of Siemens Digital Business and the new co-chair of Made Smarter. And he can come at things with a unique perspective from the focus of both being a manufacturer and a supplier. So we're delighted to have him. So Brian, over to you.
Hello, it's good to join you at M&E Week, albeit virtually. Ed, thank you so much for the invitation to speak on the topic of manufacturing and Industry 4.0. What qualifies me to comment on this or to share a perspective? Well, I'm the Managing Director for Siemens Digital Industries. We are both a manufacturer and, of course, a supplier of manufacturing technologies to multiple sectors. I'm also a board member at the High Value Manufacturing Catapult and have been working in the UK innovation space, but also quite recently have been announced as the co-chair of the Made Smarter Commission. And I'd like to come back to that, if I may, to hopefully give you a bit of context for what Made Smarter does and how it might be able to help you. So let's start with the topic of manufacturing and perhaps one or two of the headlines. I'd like to touch then on perhaps what's good, what's bad, maybe what's ugly, but let's start with the good. Manufacturing is today we are the ninth largest manufacturing economy in the world, which is pretty good considering its proportion of our GDP. That means in 2022 it should have an output of around £183 billion, and indeed it generates, or the sector provides, for 2.5 million jobs. The good news continues when you think about the fact that those jobs are roughly 12% above the average wage for the wider economy. So it's reasonably attractive as an employment opportunity. The good news continues when you think about some of the initiatives that we have in flight to help the sector. One of those, the remarkable national asset we have in the High Value Manufacturing Catapult, has seen consistent funding over the last 10 years, I would say, to help the 7 innovation centres that we've got that make up the HVMC that can help companies large and small to really innovate and scale up. So specifically, that means now that there is £486 million of R&D activity that's been linked back to the High Value Manufacturing Catapult. They today have 5,897 industrial partners, and indeed they've got over 4,600 interventions with small to medium companies who are now benefiting from that level of innovation support. So I think that's good news and worth commenting on. On Made Smarter, it won't be a surprise to you to hear that I would highlight this as a good news story for manufacturing. The original 2017 report really highlighted 4 key recommendation areas that we needed to focus on: leadership. We needed to be more ambitious, more focused and more informed in manufacturing leadership when it came to technology, its benefits, its deployment that would help us become more productive. We needed to focus more on the adoption of industrial digital technologies, as we saw that other nation states, other industrialized nation states, were doing a better job generally of adopting plant and equipment, and in particular thinking about the later industrial technologies that we'll touch on when we come to Industry 4. We recognised that innovation was under-leveraged in manufacturing, and we recognised that skills needed a distinct focus. And that's why today Made Smarter has in flight a Made Smarter innovation programme that will help leverage, when government and industry spend is put together, just shy of £300 million worth of interventions that will help the manufacturing sector, both to derive new technologies, but also to deploy them better, to hopefully lead in the IDT space. We also have in flight 4 regions that have adoption pilot activities. It started in the Northwest, it's now been rolled out to the West Midlands, Yorkshire and the Humber, and the Northeast. And this means grant funded or expert support for small to medium companies to really think about how they solve problems with industrial digital technologies. And that might mean robotics or automation technology, making use of data better, or additive manufacturing or AI. But actually, I would trust the experts are able to contextualize the benefits of those technologies to firms that are looking to solve problems and to become more productive. So what about the bad, or the areas, the room for improvement? Well, many of you are calling for a longer term industrial strategy. And I think it's no secret to highlight that we feel relatively frustrated in manufacturing about the fact that the sector doesn't necessarily get the airtime that it should in government. And of course, this has been echoed many times over. We have got a number of papers that have highlighted where government want to go with an innovation strategy. And we know that, for example, levelling up is in focus. And I think for many of us in manufacturing, we'd like to see levelling up much more linked to the manufacturing sector, particularly for the constituencies where perhaps manufacturing was stronger in the past. And certainly some of us even hope for a manufacturing white paper to follow, that something that certainly would sustain over parliaments and really put manufacturing in focus. Some might argue too that skills pathways are not yet as solid or firm as they could be from our education system into the sector, that actually needs strong vocational pathways, in fact, for both manufacturing and engineering, with parity of esteem for those entering the sector. The ugly, okay, we've got Ukraine, we've got supply chain disruption, we've got energy prices, we've got raw material prices, and we've got disruption and complexity through logistics processes. And so through my work, well, both in what I see in our firm, but also the work that I do with Make UK and CBI with their manufacturing council, I can see these are widespread challenges. And actually, they're not looking set to go away particularly soon. And so I won't go into exploring those further, but obviously, as a manufacturing sector, we need to continue to demonstrate resilience in the face of some of those headline challenges. So what about Industry 4.0? Because Ed, you'd asked me to cover, well, what does that mean? And I hope you would benefit from a practical insight. But Industry 4.0, for those of you who perhaps don't appreciate the history of it, came about in 2006. It was a German government initiative with Angela Merkel asking of the Akatech or Forschungsunion that got together to see how they could build on German industrial strengths, to really look at how the sector could bring manufacturing into the future. Could they concentrate on individualization? Could they build in batch size 1? But whilst maintaining mass production costs? Could they be highly flexible and indeed use 50% fewer resources and be 50% more productive? And could they do all of this compatible with an urban environment? So be more sustainable, but also compatible, so that we weren't building, that black box factories, of course, weren't being built in isolation of the need for people and factories to coexist. And these were really interesting ideas. They became viral. It's become the most viral manufacturing improvement idea ever, I would suggest. And it divides opinion. Whilst we have explored it at the World Economic Forum, it doesn't work for everyone. But I do think it captures the essence of what's possible through technology, and it starts conversations, which, on balance, I think has been a very healthy thing. So what about Industry 4.0? What does that mean for a firm like Siemens? Well, for us, we think about digital enterprise. We think about our products, our production processes, and our performance. It means, in particular, we think about the benefits that could be derived from digitally designing our products, virtualizing them, prototyping them increasingly in the digital world. We think about our processes and, again, virtualizing them, simulating them, optimizing them. We may even pass the digital twin of our product into the digital twin of our production environment and run the two in parallel. And that means we can bring products to market faster with fewer mistakes and at lower cost. On performance, we're increasingly using data. So data from what operators have done in the plant, data derived from machines themselves, and data derived from supply chain. And the technologies that enable that, including platforms like MindSphere, have made that a much easier proposition to both extract and exploit data, but also increasingly to use data to predict the future. So this idea of the digital twin of the product, the digital twin of the production process, and the digital twin of the performance is something that we think about in designing our products, bringing them to market. And it's certainly something that we engage with our customers on too. So you're going to ask the question about, well, walking the talk. What does that mean in practical terms? Well, at Congleton, where we describe a digital factory here in the UK, in the northwest of England, we build we have an inverter drive factory. Our latest product there, the G120X, which I know you're going to go and Google and have a look at, is a drive that is multi-purpose and can be used to reduce the energy consumed through industrial motors by up to 60%, whilst enabling the speed control of the motors. That's what they do. What we did at Congleton was take a mass production environment, essentially a production plant that built 500,000 or so units of essentially the same product. With the G120X line, we now have a production line that enables us to build one of 17,000 variants of the product at the point of build, giving the customer what they want. So we've built the flexibility in through a digital toolset, a digital approach in bringing that drive to market. Behind that, of course, is a completely paperless system, which means that we can take operator-guided instructions to line side and actually use digital technologies to become more productive. We also mine data in that process to think about what happened to each drive as it's been built that enables us to have a digital fingerprint for each of those drives as well. So another example of digital technology, something that really brought to the fore for me the benefits when it really mattered, was the ventilator challenge. And I mention this because we had the privilege as Siemens of working alongside some of the best manufacturers in the world, with Airbus, with Rolls-Royce, with GKN, McLaren, to mention just a few, to bring to market a revised mechanical ventilator derived from an anaesthetic device to build them at speed for the NHS at a time when that really mattered. We had in the UK at the time just 8,700 mechanical ventilators. We had production outputs of about 50 units per week. But the Ventilator Challenge Consortium had built 11,000 or so ventilators within just 12 weeks, which was remarkable. It wasn't entirely about digital tools, of course, but I think they had a significant role to play. And I mention it because the Siemens team at Congleton worked with partners Airbus to model the product and help train 550 operators who were used to making aircraft wings before they had sight of the product or the production environment to know how to make the product. The digital models helped inform the production environment too. They helped inform what could be fitted, the takt time, the optimum footprint, the 2 meter social distancing for operators, and helped reduce the factory footprint by about 50% from that had been derived from a conventional design. That dramatically improved the consortium's likeliness of success from undertaking that program. And it was just a 48-hour window that the team used to build the digital model, and then that predicated what followed. So it really helped us to see when it mattered, with a compelling sense of purpose and the right people, with the right mindset and digital tools together, it enabled us to see a remarkable outcome at a time that it mattered. So I would say that the advantages overall for digital tools, clearly I'm an advocate, are that when adopted appropriately, used appropriately, with the skills to deploy them, can help manufacturers derive competitiveness to bring products to market faster, productivity through increased automation, helping us to do more with less in terms of resource, and sustainability, where again, automation and data ought to be helping us to do more to help the planet. And I mention that because saving the planet surely has to be our next big compelling reason to do things together. Since the Ventilator Challenge, we've had the COP26 event in Glasgow, and it's shone a light on industry and what industry is doing as a contributor to the CO2 output of our nation state. And it's a significant contributor. And I would argue that we're not quite there yet. I think all the data show this. I think it's our mission to think about how we save the planet one factory at a time. And I think many of you will know and appreciate that the things that we can do include using high efficiency motors, because they don't maintain a level of efficiency throughout their lives, which means rewinds. It means thinking about new technology. It means using inverters, which again reduce the energy consumed through motors, one of the single largest emitters or users of energy in industry. As we move things, we heat them, we cool them, and so on. These are the things that we do. We can make better use of control systems to switch things off systematically in the plant when they're not needed. And we can make use of data to really understand better machines and performance. All of these things are industrial digital technologies that have some impact on sustainability. And indeed, it's one of the reasons why at the Made Smarter Commission, as co-chair, I've worked with Minister Rowley to suggest that at this point, as we've gone through startup and we've got these fantastic interventions underway that are helping us with innovation, with adoption and with skills, that we need to pivot more towards sustainability. The focus will of course be on productivity, but we think that there's merit in looking increasingly at sustainability too. I mean, it means that we can build on some of the interventions like Friars Chocolatiers, who've increased output by 733% to 250 grams of chocolate per day. We've got 160-year-old Cookson and Clegg, who've improved their productivity by 40%. And we've got Panas, the textile manufacturer, who've doubled their production capacity. And we want even more of those case studies. But we also want to look increasingly at whether we can do more on sustainability and productivity together. We want to see if we can leverage better the initiatives that are in flight to help companies, both through local enterprise schemes or through other programs looking at productivity like Help to Grow, and we'll be reaching out to see what more we can do on behalf of the manufacturing sector. And finally, we're going to be looking increasingly at whether we can leverage private finance better. And often we're told from manufacturers that finance doesn't necessarily work to lend against cash flows or to lend for capital, plant and equipment where a productivity or sustainability advantage could be derived. So we're going to be taking a look at Made Smarter at some of these topics for the future. So let me finish with a comment on cyber, if I may, because deploying and using industrial digital technologies, it's incredibly important that we do that in lockstep with thinking about the cyber risks, the growing threat landscape that we face. Now, the cyber threat isn't a reason not to use industrial digital technologies, but we should recognize the nature of the threat. Indeed, IBM Security X Force report released in February 2022 highlighted that the manufacturing sector was actually the #1 targeted sector worldwide, with 23% of all cyber attacks sabotaging the backbone of global supply chains. So I highlight it here because it has to be one of our big priorities for the future. One of the reasons it's a big challenge is because in manufacturing, we know that we often use technologies that lag the leading edge that we see in information technology. So it's incredibly important we keep systems up to date and patch where we can, or build firewalls and VPNs around technologies that lag and can't be updated. And some of you might smile when you think about the Windows 7 or older machines and technologies you've probably got running certain types of equipment in your plant. But it's an incredibly important thing that we focus on that too. So perhaps part of your journey in looking at the adoption of industrial digital technology and building competitiveness for the future could also be looking at cyber in lockstep and exploring, for example, whether you could deploy Cyber Essentials or Cyber Essentials Plus, or work with our cyber institutions like the National Cyber Security Centre. So let me leave it there with those headline thoughts about a sector that's exciting and presents opportunities, as we have to build resilience for the future, and we have to build skills, and we have to make sure that jobs of the future are apparent to those coming through to the world of work. I hope you can see that there's great potential in the adoption and deployment of industrial digital technologies and an innovation opportunity to lead the world in a space that we were strong at through the first industrial revolution, and we want to make sure we're at the forefront of the fourth. So I leave you these questions. Have you, as a manufacturer or as an engineer, really taken the time to understand the benefits of not just the industrial digital technologies that we've been talking about here, but the necessity for the skills needed to deploy them today and those that you might need in 5 years' time? Have you thought about sustainability? Have you done a sweep of your factory? Have you thought about engaging with experts, perhaps a Made Smarter expert, perhaps a high-value manufacturing catapult expert, or indeed a firm like Siemens or the many suppliers who could come and walk the plant with you to think about where where interventions could make the biggest difference to your sustainability footprint? And finally, are you cyber secure? Have you reached out to and appreciated the nature of the threat that you face and thought about a cyber intervention, defense in depth that starts to build in passwords, layers of security and protection, but also those physical points of separation for key data that is incredibly important for the future too? Let me leave it there with hopefully some points that leaves Ed some questions to ask me and some topics for debate that might follow after this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Brian. That was absolutely brilliant. Really insightful and great to get that kind of depth behind Industry 4.0, particularly from the perspective of someone with so much experience in it. And of course, congratulations on your new role as co-chair of Made Smarter. So a few questions to follow up with. I think what you've done there is clearly outline the benefits to manufacturing and engineering companies. You've talked about how Siemens have approached it, being able to run things alongside each other to speed your response time, to get you to market quicker, to innovate. Your Siemens, which is yay big, 99.7% of all manufacturing and engineering companies in the UK are SMEs. So I guess one of the questions might well then be coming from the audience is, well, that's all very well if you're Siemens. How do we approach that? So perhaps you could talk a little bit to us about the barriers to entry and the challenges and how to get round those if you're an SME.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect the barriers to entry are probably the same whether you're a large or a small firm. And I think they've consistently come back when, credible institutions have looked at this. I was always struck by BARA, the British Automation and Robotic Association, reports that identified a lack of knowledge of the benefits as one of the barriers to the uptake, a lack of appreciation about the cost and therefore the benefit of deploying, because of course, large or small, if you can see a payback on an investment, you're going to undertake it. So I think knowledge is the single biggest upfront barrier. Language, vocabulary, that's perhaps another. And that's why I recognise that if we talk about Industry 4.0, that's going to leave some firms cold. It's going to make them feel like, well, that sounds like corporate speak that doesn't necessarily translate into a problem that they've got. And that's why I'm such a keen advocate for the Made Smarter adoption support programme, because when you've got experts that go and take time with small business owners who are perhaps operationally running hot, shall we say, at the moment, if we look at the wider sector, then actually you can get much faster to trying to solve a business problem. And one of my favourite examples, we were able to share with Minister Rowley at our previous commissioners meeting for Made Smarter. I won't share the name, but there was a small firm in the adoption pilot scheme that had an expert point out to them that actually they could use additive manufacturing to build the tooling that they needed for what essentially was a tube forming process. I think they thought about it only for prototyping, but actually when they looked at it and ran the calcs, they could use a plastic, a polymer-based printer to account for 90% of their tooling requirements. It didn't need a metal-based printer. So actually a £4,000 investment resulted in a £40,000 profit in the following business year as a result of reduced tooling costs. And that came from a simple intervention from a Made Smarter expert. So I think we mustn't get wrapped up with this idea that Industry 4 is all-encompassing and has to grab the whole business. It's about recognising that there are really tangible benefits that can be derived from technologies that are probably more accessible and more cost effective than you think. I mean, the other thing is, of course, that you have to have a mindset that embraces perhaps doing things differently. And I would say that you've got to think about just being lean and productive in the first place. And Andrew Peters, the managing director of our Congleton plant, would highlight very quickly, don't just jump into digital. If you have a bad process and you digitize it, you'll have a bad digital process. So don't miss the basics in going back to thinking about really good lean production processes, and then think about deploying technologies that can really help improve productivity, sustainability, and competitiveness. So I think if you're not sure, go and seek help on the back of this, because whether we call it Industry 4 or not, there are opportunities in technology that I think can help, regardless of your firm size.
Well, it makes perfect sense. And I think, incremental change is what manufacturing and engineering has always been about. It's those marginal gains that improve productivity, always looking at lean. I remember one of the first factories I ever got the privilege of walking around was Triumph Motorcycles, which was a personal bit of a joy for me because I love a motorbike. And they were going through, and it was that first time of seeing the process where every member of the team was offering suggestions all the time of ways of improving and ways of doing this. And they had to protect the chrome in the engines. They had this foam wrapped around them. And someone had suggested that they'd done the calculations and measured it, and were going around saying, if we cut like 5 inches of foam off, it still does exactly the same. And they saved some huge sum of money in materials costs just from that one incremental change. Obviously not digital in that case, but that incremental improvement. Now, we talked about, and rightly so, net zero. It's inescapable. Everybody has to do it. It's an obligation on everybody's business that they have to do it. One of the big challenges, I think, facing manufacturers across the board, particularly as you highlighted with soaring energy prices and us being an energy-hungry industry, is I spoke to an SME recently, a manufacturing business in the food industry, and they were saying that actually for them to they already are a B Corp company, so they've already gone a huge way down the green route and have done for many years. But for them to get fully net zero, the investment that they are going to have to make now would actually wipe out for them as a small manufacturer almost 3 years worth of profit in order to get them to that point, which isn't sustainable in itself as a business. So how do companies facing that kind of, we want to do it, but how do we go about it? And how do they navigate the government support that's out there? What advice would you give them?
And it's a fair point. I mean, obviously, firms should start with those quick wins. And that might mean, talking to a technology company or a system integrator, or one of the institutions we've mentioned here, Made Smarter or a Catapult, to really just make sure that you've understood where you're consuming energy and what technologies could make a difference. And I've mentioned them here already. That motors, inverters, switching things off when they're not needed, using data to understand that, using sensors actually. And it may be that there are there's a broad range of technology interventions that you should be looking at first, based on the skills, if you haven't got them, that you should be at least getting in to have a little look in the first place. The policy landscape, I think it's fragmented, it's clunky, it's quite difficult to understand what's there to help. I mean, you've got policy instruments out there which I think are reasonably understood by firms large and small, like R&D tax credits or patent box that are always on. And I'd like to see more of those used for supporting investment in sustainability and energy reduction, helping companies get to net zero. We've got funds like industrial energy transformation, but it is clunky, and you've got to invest a lot of time to get going with it. Annual investment allowance, super deduction, to some extent they might help larger investments, but often they help the things that are in flight already. So it's one of the reasons that, I know CBI are considering a policy landscape. In Made Smarter in particular, we're building a pivot to the future to look at the sustainability of manufacturing. And we're going to try and understand the policy landscape. We're trying to understand the barriers to investment in sustainability, and in particular, those energy reducing technologies. We're still thinking about productivity. Can you save in cost terms? But actually, CO2 output is a natural consequence of doing things better with technologies. And often what we found, as with the adoption of industrial digital technology, sometimes a program, a bit of signposting, a bit of a stimulus in terms of government help can make a huge difference. And so, yeah, I appreciate it's not easy, but it's an area that actually warrants a little bit more focus and support, and we're aiming to do that in Made Smarter.
Yeah, I think you touched on it exactly right there, because access to finance, we were saying before, in the 10, 15 years that I've been around manufacturing and engineering, that has been the perennial discussion point. Access to finance is difficult for SMEs particularly. And then there are funds out there, but a lot of the time when you go through it, you need to be fluent in civil servant in order to understand the forms. They're not necessarily written for the audience, which can in turn make it more challenging to find their ways to access them. So it's good, for example, with innovation, where R&D tax credits are so important, and the fact that that is always on. We were talking, or you were talking before, about upskilling and skills. One of the other perennial issues that has faced this industry for time immemorial. And upskilling sounds great and is really important, and levelling up is a fundamental thing that the government are now talking about. However, what does that look like in practice? Obviously, in Siemens, you've done a lot of this work. You've done a lot of work around digital transformation, about changing skills. What things have you learned from doing that at Siemens that you could possibly pass on and as advice for those that are trying to look at what levelling up really looks like?
No, it is a challenge, and it's a challenge for us as it is for others too. When we recognise that, we've invested over some years now in early career professional schemes disproportionately. I suspect, like many engineering firms, we probably have a bit of a gap. We have those at the retirement end of their careers, and we're now growing the number of engineers and apprentices that we take on, but quite a gap in the middle. But I'm proud to tell you that my organisation now features about 15% of our workforce derived from our early career professional schemes. And so there's a 5% club. I know that we're now well and truly exceeding that. And actually post-pandemic, where many engineers are choosing to retire, in industry, this is compounding a problem. So we must keep this relentless focus on, the vocational training pathways, either apprenticeships or graduate programs where there is a significant experience element with that. So I feel passionate about that we've invested heavily in apprenticeships, we've invested heavily to train beyond our needs, and we've looked at that for both supply chain, but also for customers where we train. We've thought about ways in which we can craft programs that others can benefit from, so degree apprenticeship programs that are run, for example, at the University of Salford, that really cover automation technologies and give a fair dose of digital left and right of that as well. We've also worked, and we've got now 8 partner universities delivering what we entitled Connected Curriculum. So please do Google that if you wanted to have a little look. But it came from this sense that actually, if you go forwards in engineering and manufacturing with single discipline degrees, are those of us that are looking to deploy engineers in the future going to get the real benefit of rounded engineers who understand mechanical or electrical or software systems? And could we perhaps stretch this idea of the digital thread, designing things virtually, designing and simulating processes, extracting and exploiting data? We think it's really important that digital thread gets taught alongside those other engineering disciplines. And so, that's an initiative we've got in flight. But I think the thing I'm probably most proud of is that we've been working to, at the front end, imagine those young people who haven't yet decided what their career choice is going to be. And if you talk about manufacturing or engineering, I'm sure many of you in the audience will have had the experience that it conjures an image or an impression that just doesn't often cut through with parents, with teachers, with young people themselves. So I think we've got to grab people at the point where they're curious. And so virtual work experience, that opportunity to engage in something that hopefully is fun, or a hackathon where we've run challenges, for example, for undergraduate students. I think these things are incredibly important. And I'm really proud that hundreds of young people have signed up to our virtual work experience programs. And I hope that, I think, Ed, to your previous question about, right, but you're Siemens, you can do this. I think that was the implication of your question. Yes, we can, and we can't employ all these young people. But I hope that, or people that are signing up for it, but I hope that by creating a little bit of inspiration, as I know other firms in this sector do, like BAE, like Rolls-Royce, like Jaguar Land Rover and others, I hope that we can create an experience for those people coming through virtual work experience that makes them think about the opportunity that presents itself in engineering and manufacturing, the sheer variety of jobs from design to make, to administration to management, and all of the things that we know represent great jobs in manufacturing companies. So I hope in that sense we're sort of walking the talk to try and train beyond our needs as well.
No, I think that's absolutely right, and it certainly wasn't me having a dig at Siemens. Rest assured. Rest assured. Cyber, you touched on as well. That has grown and grown in terms of its prominence, both in the news but also across all business over the last few years. But I was actually quite shocked by your statistic on the volume of it being an attack on supply chain. With the advent of the Internet of Things, with the connectivity of smart factories and everything that's going into them now, the connection points are almost unlimited across any site at any given point, not least of all in terms of protecting your IP and everything else that you have across the business. So you gave some advice there. In approaching it in the first instance, where specifically would you kind of direct people to if they haven't got, or if they, it's not one of those things that you just go out and Google, is it? So what kind of advice would you give for those people that need to address it, which is basically everyone, because it's a must-have now?
It is. No, and I think one of the interesting things about cyber is it's wrapped up with language that makes it sound inaccessible. When we talk about defense in depth or threat vectors or and so on, and I get that. I think the point is that there isn't a single silver bullet, and manufacturers have to build the sort of protections in place that are going to help them for a variety of different threat types. What it means in the first instance is building passwords into your systems. There's an awful lot of default passwords that were left on automation technology in the past, and if you imagine if the IT department have got it in your firm, that's one of the things that we're pretty hot on these days, particularly with two-step authentication and so on. That hasn't been the history of automation technology, for example. So think about passwords, think about code in your control systems. How are you structuring that in the first place? Are you keeping the sort of data that you ought to keep safe, segmented from systems where it could be accessible on a network? We didn't used to worry about cyber in automation terms in manufacturing because they weren't connected necessarily to the internet. But today, IP addressing, using technology on Ethernet networks and connecting to the network is much more prevalent, of course. So there needs to be really good conversations between the IT departments that often understand the threat and the OT, the operational technology teams in firms. And I would say that's happening increasingly to make sure that, for example, older technologies that can't be updated are firewalled or kept separate. That's a practical challenge, that you can't run patches on a Windows 7 machine for which there's no update available. So, the point is that you build resilience and security into your plant, your equipment set as is appropriate to you. But don't miss the basics, that you might want a physical protection access ports that exist right around your plant for your network. You might want to keep the MCC room locked, and think about who has access to your systems as well. So there's a range of interventions you want to think about. Don't let people pick up USB sticks that are unencrypted and put them into the network system, the manufacturing systems that again could propagate viruses. And of course, we've had our wake-up call now with industry understanding that viruses can be propagated and can impact cyber physical systems in the real world. So I think the point is that practical things can be done, but go and seek help. And I would say National Cybersecurity Centre is a great institution that we have that their website's a great one to go and visit, to think about those simple things that you could and should be doing, or to engage with that community and suppliers who understand this to help you build defence in depth, use practical interventions, and build cyber thinking into your factory in the same way that you should be thinking about safety technology and building your design of safety and cyber into machines as you expand and grow the plant. So I hope these are practical insights that maybe give you some food for thought where you're using automation technology or information technology as a part of what you do to make things.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. We could keep going on and on and on, but I'm conscious of your time, and I'm very grateful for it. Obviously, huge thank you to Brian Holliday for speaking to us today. And also good news for those people that are online watching us now. The event live tomorrow and the day after at the NEC will feature sessions and case studies from Made Smarter. It will also feature sessions on cybersecurity. So we are covering all different things, including skills and levelling up. So make sure you come across to the event, and we look forward to seeing you there. But in the meantime, Brian, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you so much.
So I'm joined now by our next guest speaker, which is Catherine Bennett, who is the Chief Exec of the High Value Manufacturing Catapult. The HVMC have been a huge supporter of Manufacturing and Engineering Week, an active participant, and are such an important influencer across manufacturing and engineering in the UK. So I won't steal any of her time, but just to say thank you so much, Catherine, and over to you.
Well, hello. For those who don't know me, I'm Catherine Bennett, Chief Executive of the High Value Manufacturing Catapult. I'm really sorry that I'm not able to join the Manufacturing and Engineering Week in person, but I've been picking up on a great deal of excitement around the event in its launch year. And I'm really pleased that Katie Milne from MTC and Rosa Wilkinson from my own team are speaking and participating as well. Now, to me, it seems like our manufacturers, our engineers, our makers have got their mojo back, maybe standing a little taller, are feeling more confident about stepping forward and speaking up. And I think that's a great thing. For too long, it has seemed to me that you, the very people best placed to deliver solutions to the huge challenges we face as a nation, have been somewhat overlooked. Too often, perhaps, unloved by our politicians, whose agendas have more often sought to dictate and control rather than enable this sector to truly shine. But finally, and perhaps this is one of the good things that have come out of the pandemic, the world is waking up to a simple truth. And that truth is that manufacturing is, of course, central to the success of this nation. Indeed, it's crucial to the success of every nation. And it's important for protecting our planet, protecting our health, growing our economy and spreading prosperity to every corner of the land. Our manufacturers, you, the men and women who for generations have found practical solutions to difficult problems, you are at the heart of helping us meet the most difficult challenges we face today. Without you, we will never make the transition to net zero without huge sacrifices in our quality of life. We need you to deliver low carbon living with better insulated homes and more efficient heating systems. We need you to help us keep our lights on with affordable low carbon energy supplies like renewables and nuclear. We need you to help us to make the switch to low carbon transport on our roads and to air travel that's better for our environment by giving us electric engines, alternative fuels and lighter weight vehicles that burn less power. Without you, we will never be confident that we can protect the health of the people we care about. You are the people who deliver the vaccines and the pharmaceuticals we need to shield us from viruses and respond to our illnesses. You are the people who give us state-of-the-art ambulances and operating theatres. You are this country's heart. You give us the lives we want to live. Without you, we would be poorer today and less resilient tomorrow. You certainly are the people who will deliver much of the government's ambition to level up our economy. Now, with years of uneven growth across sectors and geographies, we can all see that some industries have flourished while others have sadly faltered. Some places have boomed, but some have perhaps been left behind by change. Today, I believe it is this sector, our manufacturers and our engineers, who are best placed to turn the tide. You are the people who create the jobs that bring prosperity to communities up and down our country. Today, you are responsible for 10% of this country's GDP. Together, your output is worth more than £183 billion a year. You employ 2.5 million people at average wage levels 12% higher than the average for the whole economy. And you're responsible for 51% of all of our exports, 64% of all business investment in research and development. And I know that Make UK, their speakers will also share these figures with you. They're really important for us all to remember. Just imagine our economy without you at its core. You make an outsized contribution to our success. You are this nation's powerhouse. And I believe that if we begin to cherish this sector, if we invest in it, if our policymakers set the right business environment, this sector can do even more to grow our prosperity, to drive down carbon emissions, to address the supply chain issues that we've seen wreaking havoc all over the world, and to grow our national resilience. And to make the words we hear on levelling up a reality. But to make that happen, we need to come together to drive a transformation that reaches right across our manufacturing community, boost our productivity. Innovation is at the heart of the transformation we need to make, and it is needed now more than ever. Now, honestly, I'm not naive about the force of the headwinds you have faced in recent years. Not only have you had to cope with the gale force gusts from the pandemic, you've also had to navigate changes in trade arrangements, blockages at borders, supply chain disruptions, or even total breakdowns flowing from the situation in Ukraine. You've faced struggles to fill gaps in your workforce, cost increases in every area, all while striving to satisfy demanding customers and build your market share. These are not easy times for any of us. And I know that coping with all of that and coping with the daily assaults on your bottom line leaves precious little time to make changes within your business, to evolve the new products that will capture new markets, to adapt your processes and develop your workforce so that your offer is more attractive to more customers, more competitive. But where you have the right support, where your business environment delivers the tools you need, like a skilled workforce, access to finance and access to markets, and where you are helped to harness the true power of new technologies, amazing things can happen. Just think back to the start of the pandemic. I was proud during my time at Airbus to play a small part in the ventilator challenge, where our nation's manufacturers joined forces to make and deliver the ventilators our NHS needed. Brought together under the trusted wing of the High Value Manufacturing Catapult, the UK's manufacturers stood strong and stepped up to a challenge not experienced in living memory. As manufacturers do, we delivered. But we couldn't have done it if we turned our backs on the latest technologies, particularly digital. Digital tools allowed us to prototype dummy parts fast, to design production lines and get them set up at a pace none of us had ever seen before, to get people trained at speed, virtually, in a multitude of locations when the restrictions of the pandemic meant that sitting with Nelly, that good old expression, was basically not an option. Digital tools were at the heart of the challenge of managing an incredibly complex supply chain, involving over 15 million parts from suppliers around the world at a time when borders, of course, were closed and very, very little was moving. Through it all, digital technologies allowed us to oversee the whole process from design right through to the manufacture and assembly of the finished product. They allowed us to respond quickly as understanding of the virus grew and the needs of the NHS changed. They meant we could collaborate on solving problems and tap into the insight and talent we needed to deliver results fast. Those digital tools helped us to keep the project moving at incredible pace and made sure that every ventilator we produced was of the highest quality. We went from a standing start to finish in just 12 weeks. In those 12 weeks, we produced more ventilators than the companies at the heart of the project would normally produce in 20 years. Of course, those of us in the Ventilator Challenge Consortium, we were working to save lives. It mattered that our operations were as slick as they could be. It mattered that our product was perfect. It mattered that we could connect into the wider work that was going on to tackle the effects of the virus. And I know a lot of my Airbus colleagues worked flat out to play their part. But here's the thing. The Ventilator Challenge was not just a life-saving operation. For many of those involved, it was truly life-changing. Everyone who participated took back to their businesses a sense of the real power of digital in helping us meet the most difficult challenges, a sense of the transformative effect that digital tools could have on performance, whatever they were making in their normal operations. An understanding that applied smartly and used well, those tools could help increase productivity by minimizing downtime, cut waste, and optimize production, boost efficiency, and help to keep a tight grip on costs and inventory, whilst connecting better with customers, suppliers, partners, funders. A realization that digital tools could put a spring in the step of their product or process development while enabling new business models and true company agility. We certainly needed a good deal of that during the Ventilator Challenge. New production lines were set up in days rather than months. Wholesale changes of focus for companies like Ford, who stopped making engines and converted their production lines to make ventilators. We all learned at first hand that digital is transformative. And yet, despite all of these benefits, adoption of digital technologies here in the UK is pretty slow. The same is true of the adoption of other technologies that could help companies grow. Even where we see the benefits clearly, whether from digital or robotics or automation or new materials or new processes, too often I know that firms hold back from getting started. I guess we all do stick sometimes with what we know. And that is how my organisation, the High Value Manufacturing Catapult, and our amazing 7 centres can help you. I joined the Catapult nearly a year ago. None of my early day excitement has waned. I remain in awe of our capabilities and just what we can achieve. We help firms of every shape, size and manufacturing subsector to harness the latest technologies and make sure they are equipped to meet the challenges they face. We're helping aerospace companies like my former employer to conquer the challenges of low carbon flight. We're helping automotive companies harness the opportunities that flow from new technologies with connected, autonomous and electric vehicles and alternative fuels. We're helping companies build better, more fuel efficient homes and give us the road and rail infrastructure we need. We're helping companies in our food and drink industries drive down their production costs and keep their supply chains moving. We're helping our pharmaceutical industries develop and manufacture our medicines. We're helping every company reduce its waste and then helping the companies that manage waste do it better. In every case, we help companies to break through the inertia of the familiar and strip the risk out of their investment in innovation. We give them the support they need to transform. We give them access to the know-how and experience needed to try out new things. We use the insight born of supporting many thousands of projects to help them see where best to focus resources and hold their hands as they begin their journey. We allow them to see and feel confident about how new technologies will work in practice on their shop floor. We help make sure that their workforce is ready for change through our own training facilities and by making sure that other providers understand the skills that will be needed to use new technologies and can step up to deliver them. We help with every new manufacturing technology. We don't just think about the things that come out of the factory gates. We think about the processes inside them and the people who run them. Since we came into being, we have worked with some 25,000 businesses to help them develop and improve products, to grow their market, to improve their productivity, to find and develop the talent they need, to increase their resilience, to capture new markets, secure growth investment, and, crucially, to reduce their waste and emissions. Working with the UK's world-leading research base, with government and with investors, the work we do means that these companies perform better and create the growth and jobs that fuel the health of the communities they call home. And we want to do more. The UK remains in the top 10 of manufacturing nations, and this is something truly to build on. And today, as I said earlier, people are waking up to the benefits that our manufacturers deliver: economic, social, and environmental. Finally, as Forbes magazine said recently, manufacturing is becoming the cool place to be. And it's coolest of all where it steps forward to tackle the big challenges and innovates to drive change. I know that innovation can feel really risky, but I'm immensely proud to be part of an organisation that supports firms across this sector to develop their ideas and turn ambitions into successful realities. That delivers results that not only boost the bottom line of the companies we work with, but help protect our planet, protect our health, and spread prosperity. And I want more companies to be part of our story. I want more places up and down this country to work more closely with us to drive the change. Ultimately, innovating should not be the risk businesses worry about. I expect that everyone tuning in today understands that the real risk is actually inaction. Every competent leader knows that if they turn their backs on change, they will suffer the consequences. They'll fail to manage their costs, they'll see gaps in their recruitment, and investors will turn their backs. Every competent leader knows that if they fail to evolve product lines that fit with changing customer wants, whether that's about lower carbon emissions or waste, or simply the latest design fad, they will miss opportunities and the market will move away from them. They will lose custom. In 20 years' time, when we look at the world around us and when we reflect on which companies have succeeded and grown, we won't be thinking about the people that close their eyes to the ways this world is changing. We will celebrate those that seize the agenda, transform the things they make and the way they make them, were innovative. I know that inflationary pressures make the decision to invest today seem even harder. But in these difficult times, I firmly believe that investing in innovation now will deliver long-term rewards for every company. Do not hesitate. Now is the time to be bold and invest in the productivity gains that will insulate you from the worst effects of the current headwinds. Now is the time to be forward-looking and invest in the adaptations that will protect you from changes in regulation and taxation. Now is the time to invest to become the exciting company that will attract the best recruits and retain the most talented minds. The support is there to help you make the change, not least through the High Manufacturing Catapult and our partners. Help is there so that you're ready to seize those opportunities. Today, I believe that with the High Value Manufacturing Catapult's industrial foresight and by working with our partners and the right support from government, our manufacturers can reclaim their proper place at the top table of our economy, recognised and celebrated for the value they deliver, back where we need them to be. Together, if we seize the transformation opportunity, I believe we can double the value that this sector generates. We can grow the number of people it employs in the high quality jobs that pay those above average wages that boost the prosperity of the places where employees live. We can tempt more high value inward investment into the UK and transform more of those places left behind by industrial change, as we have already done around a number of our centres. And I'm convinced we can do all of this whilst driving down carbon emissions from this sector and whilst we deliver the low carbon goods, processes and technologies needed in every other. The Manufacturing and Engineering Week exhibition will give you plenty to think about at every stage of the manufacturing life cycle. Take a walk around, talk to people, see the vast array of technologies that could help you to transform your business. Participate in some of the workshops. Find a space in the theatres. You, our manufacturers, are the people who will lead the change to a better world. You're the people who keep us well and deliver the tools of our entertainment. You're the people who bring food to our tables and warmth to our homes. You're the people who can take us into space while protecting this planet. You are, quite literally, shaping our future. The stronger, the more resilient, the more capable you are, the better we all are. Do not rest on your laurels. The time is now to make your transformation. Thank you.
So, thank you for that inspiring and impassioned. It felt like a call to arms more than anything else. And as you'd expect, I mean, obviously in your role as the Chief Executive Officer of the High Value Manufacturing Catapult, the HVMC alongside Make UK and MTC and lots of different other stakeholders are at the absolute epicenter of trying to drive the growth and innovation for UK manufacturing. So the fact that it just felt like it was a proper Churchillian, come on, let's do this kind of thing. And it's good to see because there is so much to celebrate, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, I found it fascinating to move from a large corporate entity such as Airbus, where manufacturing and engineering is absolutely at the core of what we do, and the people who work there are just so passionate about technology, and then moving to work leading this incredible catapult with an incredible purpose that it's just opened my eyes, Ed, in terms of the capabilities of our nation. I haven't had the honour yet of seeing every single centre that we operate in great depth. I've been to as many as I can, but every single time I turn up, I meet people who are so enthused about what they can do. And then more importantly, it's not just about the people and our centres and the incredible machinery and technology and brainpower we have them. It's actually examples of the partners, the companies that we've helped. The Catapult was started in 2011. As I said, I've only been there in the last year, but the success stories and the case studies are something to be built on. And that's what I was endeavouring to do by my talk, is inspire more people to realise that it isn't necessarily that hard to make some changes, and we're here to help with that.
That's absolutely brilliant. And we all know, and I think everybody knows, that in a post-pandemic, post-Brexit economy, yes, I said the B word, I won't say it again, but there's been significant challenges. We've alluded to supply chain, to the implementation of changes to try and find new business, and so on and so forth. But we also know that manufacturing is absolutely crucial to deliver that economic growth, to deliver that change. It's the heart of what you were talking about there. This is what enables everything else within our economy. This is what we need to focus on and drive on. And you said an interesting thing right at the start of your speech, which was about the growth and the innovation, and how sometimes the political environment can actually be quite controlling and dictating. Do you feel like we're in a position now where we're in a more fluid situation, where the reins are slightly less tight and we're in a better placed position to make those changes?
Well, this could get you into a debate about the pros and cons of an industrial strategy. The important thing, though, is that the different sectors are the experts. They know their markets, they know their customers. They may not know all that they could do with knowing about the processes and the different technologies that they could use to improve their production. And there's many schemes, and I know we're going to be hearing later more about the Made Smarter Commission, and the intent of that is incredibly powerful. Getting other companies to learn from other companies who've been through some of the Made Smarter schemes is very inspirational. And one of the things I do see, and I'm sure it's happening at the Manufacturing and Engineering Week, is this networking, is sharing ideas. So what does that mean about the political approach? Well, I don't think there's many politicians who would stand up and say they don't care about manufacturing. When you talk to them, when I've met them in my new role, they say, oh, do you have a centre in my constituency? They're very, very keen to attract more manufacturing jobs. So I think as a collective, they do understand the priority. But of course, there has been this debate over the years about the service sector versus, do we make anything anymore? And I think what I'm trying to do today was to say, yes, we do. And yes, we could do more, mainly because of the brain power, the expertise, and the wonderful, amazing results of collaboration, which can lead to more results. And of course, net zero, the challenge we have with net zero, is an opportunity for us. And the UK has the technology that can help with many of those challenges.
And I think you've hit it absolutely there, because it's about collaboration, it's about innovation, and it's about being inspiring. And I think we would be searching for a very, very long time to find an under pressure design, develop, product to market case study than the ventilator challenge. I mean, the numbers that you were talking about, the number of people involved, I mean, that is, frankly, without, certainly not making light of obviously what was being done and the importance of it, but that is a movie waiting to happen. It's just so much depth, so much, and made a huge real-time difference to saving lives. That must have been incredible. I
think it's important to perhaps cast our mind back, if we could, to the spring of 2020, when the call was going out for help with PPE. Of course, the vaccine process was starting, but actually then they realised that maybe the NHS didn't have enough ventilators. and it really was almost like a wartime approach. I could see those of us in manufacturing, we were calling other companies. Who do we know? What can we do to help solve this? And, full credit to the Cabinet Office and to Number 10 for getting this call to arms right. And, I'm very proud that my predecessor, Dick Elsey, the CEO at the time of the Catapult, realised this is actually where the Catapult can make a difference, because we do have the contacts, because we do have the collaboration expertise. And wow, Ed, it was so powerful to answer that call to arms. Individually, as companies, we were like, well, how could we help? What could we do? We knew we couldn't do it on our own. And it was when the likes of Ford said, we're in, when the likes of McLaren said, we're in, when Siemens, who I know you've heard from earlier, said, we're in, it was quite powerful. And we all realised, actually, we could all put our shoulder to the wheel. There were some amazing human stories as well, though, certainly from an Airbus perspective, the absolute laser focus by my colleagues up in Broughton in North Wales. We turned a rather empty building, which is part actually of the AMRC, one of our centres, into this production line. And we've got an amazing video which shows how quickly it was built using Siemens expertise. And the human stories, I had colleagues who worked 20-hour days, who gave up a lot of their personal life over the Easter break to work full time on this project. And it was honestly, Ed, a real desire to help the nation. And it was an incredibly moving thing to be part of.
Yeah, I mean, it just sounds incredible. Obviously, the results were incredible. And I'm sure there are many, many people who are thanking manufacturing, even though they don't know it had such an impact. It's been so good hearing you talk so passionately about the space, about the sector. As you've said, we will have Chris Courtney talking about the practical, how do I actually do it? How do I respond to this call to arms? How do I go out and make a difference? So thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it. And for you joining us on the first digital day of Manufacturing and Engineering Week. Obviously, for those people, manufacturers watching, please do make sure that you're at the NEC tomorrow and the day after, when all of those sessions, that networking, that learning, the practical ability to find the right people to help you on this innovation journey, or to progress you further down the road if you've already started, as Catherine's alluded to there, will be all available for you, and it's entirely free. So all of this is brought to you at no cost to you. You've just got to get there and see how it can make a difference to your manufacturing business. So in the meantime, once again, Catherine Bennett, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So we're having a fantastic first virtual day of Manufacturing and Engineering Week 2022. We've had some great speakers, and the next is no exception to that. So delighted to welcome Chris Courtney, who is not only a member of our advisory board, but he's also the challenge director for Made Smarter, something that obviously a number of previous speakers have touched on, but he's now in an opportunity to go into much more detail of how that works and how manufacturers can take advantage of it. So Chris, welcome to Manufacturing and Engineering Week.
And thanks, Ed. So welcome all. I thought I'd maybe just take a few moments of your time to talk a little bit about manufacturing in general, with the state of the sector, the transformations that I see across the sectors, and look a little bit about how Made Smarter as a program and Made Smarter Innovation can support manufacturers in terms of delivering those outcomes that we're talking about. I think if you look across all sectors, there's a fairly rapid transformation happening across all of them. Some of them have overarching and underlying themes. So the notion that ongoing disruptions, whether it's through pandemics, extreme weather events, and others, are likely to become the norm. We've seen supply chain disruptions across all sectors. How can we address delivering net zero operations and net zero products, start to embrace circularity and sustainability? How can we tackle supply chain resilience and traceability? How do we really get those global value chains fully optimized, fully robust? How can we deliver the skills agenda And underpinning a lot of that is digitalization and acceleration of technology across all of those sectors. So if you look at transport sector and look at the electrification of automotive or aerospace, the pursuit for sustainable aviation fuels, the use of hydrogen in transport, all of that being delivered into a very transformed transport system with drones, higher levels of autonomy and so on, it's pretty clear the transport sector is disrupting pretty quickly and that disruption is accelerating. Pharmaceuticals, we look at advanced therapy, cell and gene therapy, the rapid vaccine development. Again, you can see the acceleration within that sector, really highly advanced, highly complex areas critical to our survival over the last few years and critical to positive outcomes for health going forward. Food, it's the same. The advance of robotics and agri-tech, synthetic food production, the need for more resilient food supply chains, and all of that underpinned with advanced materials technology, critical materials for all those products and services that we need. How do we create those? How do we reuse them? How do we create new advanced materials for new advanced solutions? Across all of the sectors that I've touched on, there is a need for novel designs, products that themselves in their use are at net zero, but we're going to make them at net zero. And those kind of transformations happening over the next decade or so will drive significant changes in all of the products, processes, and even business models that we see across manufacturing sectors. So that creates an enormous opportunity, I think, and we live in very disrupted times. As I mentioned, digitalization is one of the key sort of underlying threads across that. So the Made Smarter program more broadly looks at digitalization across the whole manufacturing sector. So fully cross-sector in its approach, really looking at that industrial context and how can the UK position itself to become a global leader in those technologies and deliver superior outcomes for its manufacturing businesses. There is an investment program that's taking place, which is the program that I'm proud to lead, the Made Smarter Innovation Program. And so it looks at digitalization in a factory context or a supply chain context, looking at delivering significant improvements in productivity, so moving at 30% productivity improvement, but also accelerating that pathway, as I said, to the net zero production system of the future. There's some funding in place, so 147 million of government investment matched by industry, so it's a total of 300 million. And the program itself runs until 2025. How we've chosen to operate that program is to deliver really three things, or at least have three principles in mind as we're delivering the program. One is to create a connected, collaborative ecosystem to really bring together the best of UK manufacturing, UK technology, UK science base into one connected ecosystem that delivers a pathway from bright idea to industrialized solution, and to really have that sort of connected approach. Two is to put people at the core of everything. So people at the heart of digitalization means a variety of things. So harnessing the power of diversity in all its senses, including those new ideas and new voices, connecting communities of innovators and disruptors and investors, and to create very people-focused solutions. So what we call compellingly adoptable solutions. So we see digitalization being a key driver of it, and the quicker and more effectively we can make those adoptable, it will be a huge advantage for UK manufacturing. And to be quite positive in terms of using those technologies to deliver the future we want. And the future we want meaning a new manufacturing ecosystem delivering goods at net zero or better. It means a transformed future of work for people within manufacturing, higher skilled, higher paid, higher job satisfaction jobs, and strengthening resilience and sustainability and growing the economy. We've all experienced both firsthand and seen on the news the challenges of resilience, and also very aware of the challenges of sustainability. And those two challenges really underpin a lot of what we need to do within manufacturing. It creates opportunity, but also creates challenges for manufacturers as they're learning to live with those disrupted times. So within the program, we have a range of investments that we make available, and they're all designed with that in mind, that connected collaborative ecosystem. So if it's research centres in universities, through to innovation hubs and out into collaborative R&D programs, all of those programs are open, are launched. Currently, we've got over 500 companies, which have been invested in across the program, with many thousands more to follow. And it really is trying to create that sort of vibrant community across the domains. So our research centres have launched 5 of those. We have 2 innovation hubs, one for smart factory and one for digital supply chain. And both of those are launched and have opportunities to further engage in the coming years. We're really keen to try and see more companies get involved in all of those things. So many companies might think university work isn't for them. These are very much applied research centres, and currently across 5 centres we've got over 130 companies involved, and we're looking to grow that significantly. In the innovation hubs, early days for those, but there's already plans to nearly up to 10,000 companies to get support from them. As we do some of that, I think we need to then think about how can the UK, from a technology point of view, leverage the strengths that it has in terms of delivering that more positive outcome that we want in terms of net zero primarily. If you look at UK capabilities, we've got great capabilities in sort of manufacturing sense, not just in the companies, but people like the High Value Manufacturing Catapult, Digital Catapult and others. We've got a very broad university base with real academic strength in that space. And as we've seen from the research centres, a real strong desire to collaborate directly with industry. So we have a manufacturing and technology base in the UK that we can leverage. We also have a very strong technology sector. If I look at 3 technology areas in particular, AI, robotics and additive manufacturing, we've got real strengths in the UK. We have an enormous number of startups, enormous number of companies that have had investment, enormous number of research and patents and so on being produced in these areas. There are areas where we're genuinely world leading. And we need to recognize that and build on those strengths. If we can combine those, there is an opportunity for us to deliver outcomes from a net zero point of view. One of the critical things that we need to do in the next decade is become considerably more efficient with our use of resources, more efficient with our use of energy. Over the next decade, the biggest majority of CO2 reduction comes from resource efficiency and energy efficiency. One of the fastest and most effective pathways to deliver that is the use of advanced digitalization. So not only can we benefit the manufacturing companies by use of that digitalization, we can benefit the UK by creating those digital solutions here in the UK and for use across the world. So it's really important that right now we act on digitalization across the life cycle of products. So from design all the way through to end of life, we really need to embrace advanced digitalization, seek to innovate as quickly as we can, and leverage the strengths that we have in the UK to deliver that. In the Made Smarter Innovation team, we as Ed mentioned, I'm on the advisory group for this expo. I'm delighted to see it taking place. We're strongly supporting it across my team and across Innovate UK. We will be delivering keynotes, having panels, showcasing all the interventions we have, offering one-to-ones, running workshops. We'll be very present across the expo. I'm delighted to be so. I would encourage manufacturers to seek us out and seek out the wider ecosystem of people who are here to help, particularly in my area around digitalization, but in broader support around manufacturing, and take the opportunity to connect and build a community, and let's try and inspire each other towards, say, that net zero production system of the future. So maybe just to kind of pull that together with some summary thoughts. We are seeing accelerating transformation across all sectors. I'm lucky enough to work across all of them, and every single sector is facing fundamental challenges, not just delivering the next generation of products and services, but finding radically different ways of delivering those. We do have a program of digitalization innovation in place, so the Made Smarter Innovation program. And we're trying to connect to the ecosystem. I said everything from research through to applied industrial solutions, and trying to sort of build that whole pathway together and working in conjunction with a lot of our partners across the UK to do that. And we're seeing enormous engagement from industry across that whole domain. Over the last couple of years, we've seen, despite the challenges that manufacturing has faced, people really rising to the challenge, but also people really embracing innovation and seeing that it's absolutely vital for their future. And I would encourage that. And I would encourage people to get engaged with my program and other programs that can support manufacturers to do that, and to build the active communities at events, at the expo and beyond that, and keep that sort of vibrant community together. We do have some really leading capabilities in the UK, which I'm incredibly proud to work with. So not just the universities and RTOs and so on that we talked about, but also the companies themselves. Whether it's small companies or large companies across the UK, I come across many, many hundreds of companies who are doing really inspiring work. And so we should be proud of the technology base that we have, the industrial innovation that we have, and really try and harness that to deliver the future that we talked about. In a digitalization space, there's still plenty more to do. We've still got to create those net zero products at a scale and pace that we've just not seen. Digitalization is going to be a real key driver of some of that. and working out how to deliver them at net zero or better is going to be a profound challenge, which will define the next 10, 15 years of what we do within innovation. So everything, so from sort of raw materials through to end of life, we have to think of a fundamentally different way of designing, making, using products to deliver that positive future that we want. So just to finish off, we're really excited by the Manufacturing and Engineering Expo. We're delighted to be there. Myself and my team will be there, and the broader ecosystem that we've engaged with will be there, and they'll be there to help. So whether it's myself and my team, the team at the KTN, or many, many others, you'll see many inspiring and fascinating things at the Expo. And I would encourage people to engage. We're all very passionate about the future of manufacturing. We're all very passionate about what the UK can contribute towards that and the exciting opportunities that are ahead of us. So where we can help as a program or connect you into others that can help, we'll be delighted to do so in person. There'll be some information popping up on your screen shortly that'll enable you to connect into my program. I'm happy to do that. Happy for people to reach out in person at the show and afterwards as well. And we can carry on the conversation and look to build a positive future for manufacturing.
So, Chris, thank you so much for that. Really insightful, lots to cover, and Made Smarter is obviously covering a huge amount of ground across the board. I'm sure as you go across and your team go across so many different sectors and everything in every way across manufacturing, there must be universal challenges that you are seeing regardless of size and sector across manufacturing. So could you tell us a little bit about what you're seeing and what those challenges are?
Yeah, thanks, Ed. I think there are some universal challenges. I think in most manufacturers, whether you're a food manufacturer or an aerospace manufacturer, the challenge of aggregating your data, so getting the data and then making sense of it is a major, major challenge. All those manufacturers have a mixture of systems, a mixture of hardware and software. It's all on the shop floors, and trying to sort of get the data into one place and to really get value from it is a key challenge that pretty much everybody has. We have that sort of mixture of very modern and very legacy equipment, so getting the data from legacy systems. But once you maybe have done the technology piece of aggregating the data and putting it in place, it's then having the capability to get maximum value from that. And that's a mixture of, again, some technology, so the use of analytics and other things is really one of those things that is increasingly common. It's always been common in manufacturing, it's increased dramatically, but then having the skills to do that too. So I'd say that there's a mixture of a legacy estate type problem that everybody has, and how to get access to good quality data, then how to maybe analyze that. You know, the skills around both the analysis and decision making that comes from that can be challenging for pretty much every manufacturer. It's large, small, and across multiple sectors. So we do see some really interesting example programs within my investments that are fully cross-sector, because they recognize that whether you're in food, pharmaceuticals, aerospace, or automotive, or other industries, there are a lot of common challenges that we're all facing. So actually working together to address those is the right way forward.
And within that as well, as you approach it and you look at it, as a company, you're then looking at another thing. So you might be an SME that's managing a business, you're looking at ways to improve that business. And over here, we've got Made Smarter and all these different initiatives and opportunities for you to explore and look at, which obviously take time, and it can then distract you from other things that you're doing. So the way that people make those decisions, obviously, is what's in it for me? What are the wins? What can I gain from doing so? So what can they gain? What is the real benefit here?
I think whether it's in the Made Smarter adoption program or in the innovation program, you've seen a really large number of SMEs, for example, come onto the program and get really quite significant benefits in terms of things like reduction in waste or productivity. So you're talking to 25-30% productivity gains, substantive gains within that. And the key thing for those companies is to try and find some key people, key partnerships to try and work with, people that you trust. So when we say in my program about building that community, it's really to have a trusted community of experts that SMEs can come and get access to, so you can find your way to somebody who really can address your problem. I think not only is there sort of time pressures and skills issues for some manufacturers, it's also knowing where to start and who to start with. So we've seen across the Made Smarter Northwest program, and in the early stages of my innovation program, big step changes, particularly in that sort of productivity and reduction of waste area, by using some advanced digitalization. And the people who've been successful at it have formed really, really strong consortia. So we've got some really interesting companies maybe formed. There's one that started with a startup, a university, and the local industry has then grown, an SME manufacturer has then grown out to have a much bigger consortium of the best global manufacturers you could name. And that started from a very small base, delivered some initial value, and is now growing into really quite a big consortium for them. So I think most SMEs making a start where you think there's value, which is really driving up productivity, reducing waste, and starting to build a consortia as you go forward. And that consortia normally will need to get a little bit bigger as you start to take on more complex challenges down the road.
So as we progress and make those changes, one of the things that you talked about was designing for the circular economy, designing for product life and life cycle. As ever, net zero, absolutely the top of everybody's agenda, has to be. There is no choice. Sustainability has never been more important. Demand from consumers, demand across the board, and a government imperative. So we all know how important it is. However, easy to say, can have huge implications in terms of the actual implementation. Supply chain, your actual product itself, your manufacturing sites might need significant changes to make that possible. What kind of best practice have you seen of examples, and what advice would you give when approaching that side of things?
I think you touched on many of the major issues that people address. I'd maybe just add one other about, particularly in regulated environments, people then have to address regulatory challenges. So I think it starts right from the beginning of, material choices and setting standards for your supply chain in terms of the level of recycled content or recyclability in terms of those materials, working with regulators as needed, and starting to sort of think ahead and build future supply chains. So, as we move towards electrification, we're finding there's critical materials within that the world needs, and we also then need to think about how to recycle some of that. So everything from the designing to the recycling process and having the supply chain for that. So we don't just need the recycling technology, but we need the recycling infrastructure to try and bring those materials back into the original value chain. So taking that holistic and systems approach is pretty common in terms of good practice, and I think it can apply to companies at all sizes to really look for those sustainable material choices that they can make. And to look for where there might be local partnerships and so on that they can form that might assist with that more circular type economy. Circularity doesn't have to mean, place-based clustering. It doesn't have to mean everybody sort of clusters together, but it can be an advantage in some areas. So for certain material types and certain products, you've seen circularity and the sort of place-based view coming together to really start to think about how can I deliver a net zero cluster for manufacturing.
Yeah. I think it's going to be so exciting over the next few years as all of this progresses, because there's so many. I mean, as we know, as you mentioned right at the start, you're on the advisory board and have been helping shape the content program for the next few days. So much of that content is about net zero approaches from small companies, from large companies, talking about whether it's product lifecycle, material choices, who they work with. I think it's just on the tip of everybody's tongue all the time. Now, obviously, we have very wide range of size of companies, as every industry does. So, but Made Smarter is designed specifically to cover everybody, regardless of size. So whether you're a Siemens or a Rolls-Royce, or if you're a small manufacturer working in a supply chain, you are absolutely covered. So do you need a different approach working with different sizes of companies?
Yeah, I would say so. They do have slightly different challenges if you look from the very large to the very small. And some of the very small, it's about forming that ecosystem and helping them build a partnership and trying to connect them in with the right people. Trying to provide some support and guidance through the Made Smarter adoption program around where they should invest and where the value might be and so on. So to give a little bit of a starter boost and get people on that journey and sort of on the pathway to more advanced digitalization. We do invest within the innovation program in a pretty balanced way in terms of SMEs and large. So the investment funds go into both SMEs and large companies, but we tailor it slightly differently. So in our innovation hubs, particularly in the Smart Factory one, it's very SME focused. So it has a a different approach. It has smaller amounts of funding provided on a more rapid basis than the larger, more complex programs. So I do think there is a different need. Sometimes the big company approach is to have a bigger strategy and a bigger plan, and these are much bigger investments for them. A lot of SMEs really make some progress by making a start and working at a sort of quicker timescale and explore a little bit more. If you can provide the kind of support to give them good guidance as to what kind of things to explore, how to do it, connect them into a community of people who can help them, provide a small amount of funding to support that, and then see where it goes. We've seen some really, really interesting manufacturing SMEs who are starting to change their business model, but they didn't intend to do that at the start of the project. It's really as a byproduct for having explored some digitalization and started to then follow down some steps. So rather than start with a sort of a big end in mind, SMEs often it's really about how do we take the next step? How do we take the next step and move forward? So we try to tailor our support both within the Innovation and Adoption Programme to recognise those different needs and to provide the help that SMEs need versus the help that large companies need.
Fantastic. And you'll obviously be on site over the next 2 days, as you've said, and your team will be there in a variety of different capacities, both speaking, running panels, workshops, and physically at the event throughout. So anyone that wants to connect with you, we're going to put a slide up shortly which will have those contact details and the information on how to get engaged. But I guess everyone can come and see you and hopefully form a queue around the block to find out more about how to get involved.
Yeah, I hope so. We're really looking forward to it. We've got a lot of help that we can offer, as I mentioned in the discussion before. So I'm delighted to do so. So both my team and the wider team that we have around supporting it will be there. Come and find us. We'll engage with you. We'll try our best to help. And hopefully, we can inspire some more manufacturers to start their journey of digitalization and inspire more technology startups to support them.
Brilliant stuff. Well, Chris, thank you so much for your time today. Remember, you can still register for your free pass to access the physical event tomorrow at the NEC. So hopefully we will see you there. In the meantime, thank you so much again. Hope you've enjoyed this afternoon and all of our great speakers. And we look forward to seeing you in Birmingham tomorrow. Chris, thank you so much for your time. Well, I hope you agree that was a phenomenal range of speakers, so huge thanks to them for giving up their time and for participating in our digital day, the start of Manufacturing and Engineering Week. If there was anything there that inspired, that caused questions to be raised, or made you think about how you could be running your manufacturing or engineering business more effectively, then don't forget that tomorrow morning the doors open at 10 a.m. at the NEC in Birmingham. So make sure you come along. There's still time to register. It's entirely free to attend, and we hope to see you over the next 2 days. In the meantime, once again, thank you to our speakers. Thank you to all of you for participating and giving up your time, and hope to see you tomorrow. Thank you, and have a great day.